I know that there's a segment of the population in the West, in America, in Europe, in the UK, who feel that their society, that their civilization went astray because they moved away from religion, from Christianity. And there are people who believe that what they need to do is to revive what they call traditional conservative values, Christian values, and so on. And these people are generally regarded and generally regard themselves as right wing on the political spectrum. And there are Muslims in the West who believe that we can ally with the so-called right wing on the basis of shared traditional values. But I think that this is just as much of a mistake as the Muslims who thought that we should ally with the so-called left and with liberals. Because look, the truth is, there is no right or left wing in the West. There is a very limited spectrum of discourse, the parameters of which are rigidly enforced to exclude anything of substance. Pundits and commentators on either side of this narrow spectrum are tasked with making the discourse appear broader than it is, while simultaneously fixing the parameters of discussion by articulating the official positions of each acceptable political extreme. That's what they do. You know, people like to talk these days about gatekeepers. That's a very popular term these days. But the real job of gatekeepers isn't to decide who gets to be let in. It is to ensure that no one can get out. So there's no real difference between, say, a Rachel Maddow and a Dennis Prager, between an Anderson Cooper and a Bill O'Reilly, not in terms of their function, because their function is to make it appear that there is broad diversity of opinion, broad discourse, but that broad discourse is actually just a mural of a vast horizon that's been painted on the wall of a prison cell. So look at just one area in the West, in Western society. Just look at relationships between men and women. So on the so-called left, you have, the woke side of the spectrum. You've got third or fourth wave feminism. You have the LGBTQ. You have all this confusion about what a woman is. You've got the constant drumbeat proclaiming that everything is toxic masculinity and misogyny. And you've got this whole complicated new set of protocols around consent, where even customary attempts at flirtation and seduction can be construed as grooming, on and on. I mean, I would say that I don't know how you could possibly make it more complicated for men and women to enter into a relationship than what the left has done. But then there's the people on the right, the so-called right. There you have these red pillars, black pillars, MGTOW, and all this alpha male masculinity, machismo, teaching men that women are hypergamous gold diggers, marriage is a scam, women are inferior, and no one should ever invest emotionally in a woman, and so on and on and on. They're indoctrinating young men into a mindset that guarantees that they will never be attractive to a woman or ever be involved in a serious relationship with a woman. Both sides seem determined to ensure that men and women do not get together and do not procreate. Both sides seem to want you to go extinct. Now, there's no right wing or left wing in the West. The right wing are the people who tell you constantly on the biggest public platforms in the media that they're saying what they're not allowed to say. They're getting paid hundreds of millions of dollars and generating millions and millions of views saying the supposedly unsayable. But of course, this is all within the designated discourse. As far as the so-called right wing goes, the so-called Christian right or traditionalist right wing, well, it's incoherent. Well, it has to be incoherent because Christianity has no jurisprudence. It doesn't have that kind of system. One kind of Christian will say that Christians shouldn't drink alcohol, while another kind of Christian, Catholics say, literally serve wine during their religious services, or used to. So which is it? Some Christians think that homosexuality is a sin. Others say God is love and everything is fine, no matter what you do. So there's no solution in so-called Christian traditionalism. You can't backtrack on the path that you're on to make things better. Like I've said before, you're on the wrong path in the first place. So going backwards isn't going to help. I mean, look, there's a reason why your society's abandoned Christianity to begin with. Because the church didn't actually civilize you. Because how could it? I mean, you abandoned Judaic law, which at least was a law, and you replaced it with ambiguity and moral capriciousness, where you either have to have the church fathers decide for you what's right and what's wrong arbitrarily, or else you just have to let your own heart decide, as if your uncivilized heart is even a trustworthy guard against selfishness and desires. You rejected theocracy for secularism because your theocracy was already immoral anyway, and it granted divine status to tyrannical men who pretended to represent God on earth. So really, your secularism was just a cosmetic change because you're still doing the same thing. Men were deciding what was moral and what was right and what was wrong before under the church, and they continued doing that after secularism, claiming essentially the same level of absolute moral authority. The only difference really between secularism and theocracy, according to the West, the way the West practiced it, the separation of church and state, the only difference is that it allowed the exile of morality from the realm of business. So the point is, there's no solution in going back to the thing that already was not convincing or compelling enough for you to have kept hold of it to begin with. You let go of it for a reason. It didn't provide sustainable, codified, practical guidance for you. It didn't do it then, and it's not doing it now, and it can't do it now. That's why you moved away from it in the first place. And who are the big heroes of this traditionalist movement? You've got like Jordan Peterson, who was supposed to be sort of the messiah of masculinity for young men, Mr. Return to Traditional Christian Values. This is a man who can't even answer the question directly whether or not he believes in God, and who started cashing in on his notoriety as soon as he possibly could, caring about depressed and lonely young men all the way to the bank. He's become now a parody of himself, and he did that for money. Sold his soul to the Daily Wire. Now he's just a standard issue right-wing talking head, just run through an AI program to make all of his talking points have more syllables, to make the normal talking points sound more academic. And your other one is Ben Shapiro. That's the other one they've got. And maybe Dennis Prager. Both of them are Jewish. I mean, just ask Ben Shapiro if he's willing to pray in a Christian church, if it's even allowed for him to do that. But of course, you'll need the Jews to help you with articulating some kind of traditionalist morality, because they at least have some kind of law. They have some kind of system. It just happens to be the law and the system that Christianity jettisoned right from the get-go. That's what even made it Christianity. So that's a bit awkward. But look, it's not only Jews. You can see Christians now, wanting to revive Christianity as if that's the solution to the moral decadence of the West, the deviance. But look at what they're doing. Now you can see Christians basically trying to Islamize Christianity. I mean, you've got preachers going viral online, going viral on social media, talking about, I'm not going to let no Muslim out-pray me, right? So you have Christians now prostrating in prayer, making sajda like Muslims. It's become desirable in the West now for men to grow their beards, and you'll be made fun of if you don't have a beard. Well, that's a Muslim thing. You have people like Candace Owens talking about dressing modestly, Never mind the fact that she's got herself made up to look like one of the Kardashians these days, talking about women covering up. They're basically saying that in order to be a good Christian, you ought to act more like a Muslim. But they want to tell themselves that this is all from their deen. But they're trying to copy us. And see, this is the core problem. This is the core of the problem. Westerners, like everyone else, have a fitrah. They have an innate nature. And the truth of the matter is that innate nature conforms with Islam. But their society has told them, has propagandized them, has made them believe that their civilization, that their culture, that their society embodies that nature, that innate nature. But it doesn't. This is the root of the cognitive dissonance. Internally, you believe in fundamental values, and your society tells you that Western values, Western culture, Western civilization represents the pinnacle of those values, when it is actually a civilization that contradicts and opposes those values down to the most minute detail. That's why so many of you feel sick. That's why so many of you feel confused. That's why you feel hopeless. That's why you feel depressed, because you are living in a hell that you're constantly being told is a paradise. So not only does that make you feel sick, but they feed you more of what is making you sick while telling you that it's a cure. You know, we need to revive traditional Western values. That's the problem. No. Traditional Western values is what got you where you are now. That's what made you sick. That's what's causing your problem. I've said it before, but it bears repeating ad infinitum. Your civilization has betrayed you, and it is betraying you. It's not what it seems. Western civilization is not as advertised. You actually believe, maybe, what your civilization claims to believe in, but doesn't. You have to come to terms with the fact that it doesn't actually believe in those values, and it never did. And these people, these so-called right-wingers, these so-called traditionalists and whatnot, they are more opposed to Islam than anyone else. Now, for liberals, they think that morality is itself a sickness. So they're not trying to sell you morality as a cure. But the so-called conservatives, they want to take that old arsenic off the shelf and sell it to you as medicine with the label traditional Western values on it. So Islam and Muslims pose a threat to their marketing. It poses a threat to their market. You can't have someone providing free medicine to people when you're trying to sell them snake oil. And that's what they're doing. That's what these so-called conservatives are doing. They're selling snake oil, packaged in patriotism, packaged in nostalgia, packaged in the Bible, packaged in your rich Western civilizational heritage or what have you. But they're just peddling more sickness. The liberals think that sickness and health are the same thing. So they're not selling fake cures. But the right-wingers are pretending to sell cures. But again, there is no actual right or left in the West. They're both just trying to keep you sick. And Muslims shouldn't partner with any of them as far as I'm concerned. Because when we partner with them, whether it's the right or the left, that just lends fake credibility to them, and it discredits us when we do that. Islam is the cure for what ails you in the West. Because of course it is. That's why these merchants of sickness teach you to hate Islam as much as they do. Because they're in the fake vaccine business. Whether it's a biological virus or a moral virus, they're selling placebos. And they don't want you to ever even accidentally stumble upon a natural cure. And that's what Islam is. It's a natural cure. And a natural cure is bad for business. And that's why Islam is locked out of the discourse, the mainstream discourse, by both the so-called right and the so-called left. The only time that they'll bring Islam into the discussion is exclusively to misrepresent it, to distort it, to make it look bad, to make Islam look like it's a virus itself. They want to make you think that Islam is the same old corrupt theocratic system that you used to have. Well, it isn't. They won't talk about Islam except to lie about it. And anytime a Muslim tries to get into the discussion or gets invited to be in the discussion, then that Muslim will almost inevitably dilute the cure that Islam is. They'll mix it with the sickness that you already have to make it taste more familiar to you. Because they think that if they can just get a few drops of medicine to you, it might help. But in my opinion, it won't help. In my opinion, it doesn't help. Because you're more likely to just take those few drops of medicine along with the arsenic that you're getting from the right-wingers, and you'll actually start to think that the arsenic might be working. Or else you'll take the sickness that the left is giving to you, and you'll actually start to think that maybe that sickness is health. So no, in my opinion, the right and the left in the West are just two sides of the same coin. And I don't think that either side of the Western coin is closer to us or closer to Islam than the other. And at the end of the day, it's a counterfeit coin. And you can't use a counterfeit coin to buy anything except for trouble. So you're just asking for trouble when you try to align yourself with either side of that coin.